Hey guys, it's your pal on wheels, Coy Hot Wheels, coming at you with another video. Yeah, I know, it's been a minute. I haven't done a video in, probably a couple months. A lot went on this summer. I had to have surgery to get a kidney stone taken out in early July. And then, I had to get a stent put in after that. And then after that, right as I was getting ready to get the stent removed, I had a kidney infection in my left side and had to go in the hospital for a few days. So, yeah, July was kind of a rough month for me. So, and, I've been dealing, I've dealt with anxiety for as long as I live. Or for as long as I have lived, I should say. And, and I finally just decided, you know what, it was time to, get some counseling and try to, figure this out. So I started doing, telehealth counseling, and and that's really helped. And doing all this counseling has really made me realize something. That I've been a big collector of a lot of things my entire life. I've gone into why I've collected certain things, and a lot of it is, well, first I want to talk about something that I heard at a flea market one day. Of all places, where people go and they buy all these little trinkets and things that they collect. And there was this young man, he looked to be, pre-teenager, early teenager, and he wanted this action figure. And he wanted his mom to give him the money to buy it. And his mom was like, is this going to add value to your life? And he said, well, no, but it looks cool when I want it. He wasn't, being a brat about it or anything. He was just doing what a typical kid does, when, he wants money for something. I mean, he wasn't, throwing a fit or anything, not doing anything wrong. But that quote of, does it add value to your life, really stuck with me. And I sat there and I looked at all this stuff that I had. I had wrestling figures. I had Beanie Babies. I had Funko Pops. And I'm like, does all of this really add value to my life? Yeah, it's cool to look at. But at the same time, I'm like, what value is it adding? And I was just like, it's not really adding a whole lot of value. I have all this stuff on shelves, and sometimes, because I had so much of it between everything, it kind of overwhelmed me. And I'm like, you know what? It's time to just clear this stuff out. Sell it off and get some money to buy video games. Because video games have always been the thing since I've been a teenager that I've always gone back to. I've tried to get other hobbies, not because I wanted to quit playing video games, but just so, that wasn't all that I did. And I was just kind of like, But these video games, sometimes they might sit on the shelf for a little bit, but eventually I play. I get several hours or even years of enjoyment out of it. Whereas, this knick-knacky stuff, it just sat on the shelf. And, I cleared out all my wrestling figures. I cleared out all my pops. Like, I sold some of them on eBay. I sold some of them, to some friends or, to people that would buy them off of Facebook Marketplace. And the rest of them, I traded in and got a few video games out of it. And I don't regret it, like, at all. Everybody was telling me, because I always had this thing, when I was, like, early in my adult years, I would sell something, I'd get the money, I'd use the money for what I wanted it, and then a few months go by and I'd be like, I miss that. I kind of want to have it back. I did that with my movie collection. I sold all these movies because I'm like, all this is going digital. I don't need all of these DVDs and Blu-rays. And I sold them to my friends. I sold them at yard sales. I traded them in. And then I would eventually go and I'd buy them again. And then 2 years ago, and I've talked about this, I actually made a video on it, of getting rid of my movie collection, like, once and for all. And I was like, you know what? Like, these just sit on the shelves. I don't watch them. I really don't have an interest in watching them. So I'm just going to, let them go. A local video game store that I frequent, shout out to Round 2, he said he would take them off my hands, and, and I did, eventually it ended up being like $200 in cash trade, and I'm like, and even, a couple years later, I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, I am so glad I did that trade. I'm so glad I offloaded all of that stuff. Because, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't collect things that make you happy. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I think sometimes it gets to a point where you're like, okay, I'm so overwhelmed by this stuff that it's increasing my anxiety, and I'm just like, because you gotta clean around it, you gotta do all this other crap, and I'm just like, it's better to just get rid of it. And I seen something on social media that talked about, like, collecting and hoarding and stuff like that, and, you have a lot of guilt hoard, because, somebody gave this to you, and you're like, I don't want to get rid of it because somebody gave it to me. But then you're kind of sitting there and you're like, okay, yeah, it was cool when I got it, and yeah, it meant something to me at one point, but I've kind of grown out of that. I'm not really into that particular thing anymore. And, with me being, 27, it's like I want more, I guess I should say, like, older people toys, like when people are older, they go out and they buy ATVs, campers, which, I'm not into that, but my type of toys are like, like tech toys, I have my video games and my video game systems. I'm back into, collecting retro stuff again because I enjoy playing those games, even the older sports games, like the backyard sports games and all that. I love playing those games because they're fun. I enjoy them. I get several hours of entertainment out of it. And, and I'm getting into DJing because I love music. I've always been a music fan ever since I was little. I would listen to just about anything. And so, I'm wanting to get because right now I'm just DJing on my iPad, but, I upgrade to a decent laptop that I could use for, like, gigs and stuff like that. You know, I'm into my drum set. I don't play it as often, you know, as I should, because it's great exercise for me. You know, I should be getting into it more, but, you know, those are the types of things that I'm getting into. And something that I've learned through counseling is, like, your brain fully develops. Because, you know, I was having these, you know, like, you know, a few years ago, like, I had no interest in dating. Like, you couldn't convince me. And, you know, and I still don't know if that's what I want, but, you know, it's something that, you know, has piqued my mind as I've gotten older. And something that my counselor has said is, you know, your brain is fully developed now. And I'm like, you know, I'm just like, I didn't understand what that meant. And he said, well, and I could have the statistics wrong, but it's like for a female, you know, your brain develops at 24 fully, and then I think males, it's 26. So, you know, with me being 27, it's like, okay, my brain is fully developed now. So, you know, I'm thinking of things like, okay, yeah, I wanted to appeal to a nostalgia craze, you know, that's why I bought wrestling figures, that's why I bought Beanie Babies, you know, because those are the toys I grew up playing with. But eventually, like, I accumulated so much of it, then I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is so much. Like, you know, I went to Menards and got these wall shelves that my dad put up for me. And I had all my Beanie Babies on it because I bought a bunch of Beanie Babies at an auction. Like, I'm telling you guys, like, the tote was, like, probably from, like, about, like, maybe from, like, there to, like, you know, where I'm at. Like, it was, and there was, like, 3 totes. And, you know, my staff helped me put them up on my shelf, and it's like, you couldn't even see them all. And eventually I'm like, you know what? These are way too many. Like, I am one man. I don't need all of these. So, I loaded them up in trash bags because I didn't have any totes. And somebody came and literally just took them all off my hands. And I just sat there and I went like, thank God. Because it's just like, I don't need all of this stuff. Yeah, it's cool and it reminds me of my childhood, but I'm like, eventually that nostalgia feel went away. Like, I'm like, I can move on from this. You know, I want things, like I said, that are going to be useful and that are going to add value to my life. And those are the types of things. So, you know, like, and honestly, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm going to, like, I want to get more into, like, doing YouTube. Like, I don't know if I'm just going to talk about, you know, like, retro video games, if I'm going to still talk about wrestling a little bit, you know, sports, you know, maybe my DJing. I don't know. I mean, I know DJing's kind of a little finicky because, like, you don't want to get copyrighted for, like, playing the music or whatever. But, you know, mainly it just might be a lot of, like, video games. Like, I did a trade of Amiibo figures, like those little Nintendo figures that you could use in games, and I bought a PSP, you know, the old PlayStation Portable, because I had one as a kid and I loved it. Like, you know, whenever I had to go to doctor's appointments as a kid, like, I always took that with me. You know, because I'd sit here and I watch wrestling and I watch sports and I'm like, I need something to do with my hands. Because I can't just sit and stare at the screen. Like, I'm too ADHD for that. So, you know, I get these handhelds and I love it. You know, I sold them off when I, you know, got my gaming PC that I have now because I'm like, I don't really use these, but now I'm just kind of like, I really want to use some of these because some of these had like really good games that I really liked. Now, a lot of the older handheld ports are, not as great as their, home console, counterparts, but, some of the games are fun. Like I have this Harry Potter game, like the Chamber of Secrets on my PSP, and it's kind of, just because, it's kind of buggy in a way, but, like, like the wrestling games I like playing on it, old sports games, that sort of thing. So I don't know, like, how big my handheld collection would actually be, but, that definitely is something that I'm getting into. I just got another PS3 again. I got one that works flawlessly. I got a PS3 Slim, and I'm absolutely loving it. So yeah, guys, this video's been kind of rambly, I just haven't hopped on in a while, and I had some stuff I kind of wanted to talk about, get off my chest. So, if you guys enjoyed this video of me just rambling on about collecting and all this other crap, feel free to give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again in the next video, whenever that may be, because I don't know when I'll post the next one, if I'm being honest with you. But I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.